The movie opens with a train passing through a deserted area. Inside the train, a rough-looking man named Virgil is sitting, eating some pieces of bread. In front of him, a strange woman is staring at him while trying to calm her baby down. After some time, the train stops and Virgil steps out, but not before handing his bread to the woman inside. He then walks to a nearby shop and asks the owner if he has seen someone around. However, the owner keeps watching the TV without responding. Later, Virgil inquires about the bathroom, and the owner directs him in a different language. After walking for some time, he finds the bathroom dirty and filled with flies. Despite this, Virgil is compelled to use it to ease his stomach. While in the bathroom, a manly voice asks if he's waiting for someone to go to the compound. Virgil responds, "Yes," and the man walks away. Later, as Virgil washes his face, in the following scene, Virgil is shown along with a truck driver, Keith, who is driving him to the compound. On the way, Keith explains his fee for taking Virgil there. Virgil is surprised to see an additional charge, as he thought it would only be $200. Feeling the extreme heat, Virgil tries to turn on the AC in the truck, but Keith scolds him, explaining that it will put pressure on the engine and damage it. After traveling a fair distance, the truck's tire blows out, and they are forced to pull over and change it. While doing so, they spot two wild dogs fighting. Seeing this, Keith chases the healthy dog and mercifully kills the injured one. Soon after, they fix the tire and continue their journey. Later, they stop to refill gas, but since it's already night, they decide to rest for the day and resume their journey the following morning. As they spend the night together, Keith asks Virgil about his motive for going to the compound. Virgil replies that he's searching for a lifetime opportunity and is certain he can find it there. Keith, being familiar with the compound, warns Virgil that it's not a place for opportunities, only hard labor. Virgil, undeterred, says he isn't afraid of hard work. The next morning, Virgil is shown driving the truck while Keith rests in the passenger seat. After some time, Virgil feels the heat and turns the AC up to full, causing the truck's engine to stall. When Keith finds out, he angrily tells Virgil to pull over. After stopping, Virgil apologizes and steps away to relieve himself. While walking back, he notices a cluster of rocks. Feeling curious, he brushes off dirt from one of the rocks and discovers that it appears to be gold. Excited, Virgil calls Keith over and asks him to take a look. Keith tests the rock by burning it with his lighter and, seeing that it doesn't turn black, confirms it's gold. The scene then shifts to the two of them using shovels to dig out the gold. However, the rock is so massive and deeply embedded that, despite their efforts, they can't budge it. They then decide to tie a rope to the truck and attempt to pull the gold out, but the rock remains firmly in place, and the rope snaps. That evening, Keith sets out to gather firewood, explaining to Virgil that wild dogs are active in the area and can only be kept away with fire. Sitting around the fire, they discuss the fortune they've just discovered. Keith becomes excited at the prospect of their lives changing. After some time, Keith mentions that since they can't extract the gold, one of them will need to return to town to get an excavator. He suggests that Virgil should go, as he's unfamiliar with the desert and its dangers. However, Virgil insists that Keith should go, while he stays behind to guard the gold. Virgil argues that he doesn't know the town or have the necessary contacts. After a final discussion, Virgil confirms that it's his final decision, adding that he can handle the situation on his own. The next morning, Keith prepares to leave, providing Virgil with canned food, water, and a small tent cloth. He also hands Virgil a satellite phone for communication and a pocket knife for protection. Keith mentions that it may take him about 5 days to return with an excavator. As he leaves, he advises Virgil to keep his head up and take care of himself. Later, Virgil sets up the tent cloth between some trees, creating a makeshift shelter. He checks the satellite phone to ensure it's working, then goes off to scavenge for firewood in the area. When Virgil returns after collecting some firewood for the night, he finds a scorpion roaming around his shelter. He uses a piece of wood to chase the scorpion away. Soon, night falls and Virgil is shown sitting beside the fire, heating his canned food. He enjoys his meal but becomes worried after hearing the wild dogs quarreling nearby. As a result, he grips his pocket knife tightly. The following morning, Virgil wakes up pale and tired. He immediately goes to relieve himself, but hesitates to waste any water to clean up. Meanwhile, the satellite phone rings, but before Virgil can drag himself to it, the call cuts off. Frustrated, he walks around the area and finds the remains of a crashed plane. He considers using it as shelter, But because the gold site isn't visible from there, he abandons the idea. However, he takes some parts from the plane and uses them to reinforce his shelter. Shortly after, a tired Virgil dozes off. When he wakes up, he finds part of his face burnt due to the sunlight. He sits beside the gold and starts talking to himself. While doing so, he gets the idea to try breaking off a chunk of the gold. After repeatedly striking it with a rock, he succeeds in breaking off a small, heavy piece of gold. At the same time, Keith calls him on the satellite phone, and Virgil quickly answers. Keith informs him that it's going to take longer than expected because his truck's engine is overheating frequently. Virgil excitedly tells Keith that he successfully broke off a small chunk of gold, but Keith advises him to stay by the gold and assures him he'll try to return as soon as possible. That night, Virgil sits by the gold as wild dogs approach. He uses the firewood to chase the dogs away. The next morning, he pours some water into a bottle and drinks it. At the same time, he notices a striped snake approaching him. He tries to kill the snake, but it escapes. When he turns back, he realizes he accidentally knocked over the bottle and spilled most of the water. Later, he revisits the plane crash site to gather more wreckage for his shelter. Right then, he notices someone walking toward him. He hides inside the plane. After some time, a stranger, a woman, arrives beside the plane and asks him to come out of hiding. The woman offers him some food and drinks, but Virgil refuses to accept anything from her. She questions him about his motives and how he ended up in the desert, but Virgil remains silent, ignoring her questions. Later, he offers the woman shelter in the plane and starts to leave. However, the woman grows suspicious, thinking he's hiding something from her. She chases after Virgil, asking more questions about how he got there. Irritated, Virgil confronts her and tells her to leave and stop interfering. At that moment, the woman notices Virgil's shelter and starts walking toward it. When she tries to destroy his shelter and tells him to leave, Virgil becomes enraged and hits her with a shovel, killing her instantly. He then takes all the useful items from her backpack and buries her near his shelter. Shortly after, wild dogs dig up the woman's body and start pulling it apart. Virgil chases the dogs away and drags the body farther away before burning it with firewood. While doing so, his eyes fill with tears. The next morning, Virgil wakes to the sound of the satellite phone ringing. He answers it, and Keith informs him that he's found an excavator, but will need more time to get there, as the heavy load is slowing him down. Before hanging up, Keith encourages Virgil to stay strong. Later, Virgil notices a truck passing by, but his greed for more gold keeps him from signaling for help. While searching for firewood that night, he sees a sandstorm approaching. He runs toward his shelter and tries to stay safe, but the storm quickly rips apart parts of the shelter, forcing him to flee for his life. On his way, he is struck hard by a tree branch. After the storm passes, Virgil wakes up buried under a heap of sand with a branch stuck in his stomach. Instead of pulling the branch out, he rushes to the gold site to inspect it. After removing some sand, he finds the large gold rock and faints beside it. In the next scene, Virgil pulls the branch from his stomach, bleeding profusely. He makes a fire and heats a can in it, crying as he uses the hot can to disinfect his wound. Afterward, he paints his face with sand and collapses. When he wakes up, he sees a woman pointing a crossbow at him. Virgil starts hallucinating, seeing visions of the previous woman he killed. The woman gives him some water and leaves. When Virgil opens his eyes, she's gone, and he concludes that he's hallucinating. Meanwhile, the satellite phone rings again, and he digs it out of the sand. Virgil tells Keith about the woman, and Keith advises him to get rid of her. After the call ends, the woman reappears and offers to help Virgil. However, a greedy Virgil, focused only on the gold, angrily tells her to go away. Before leaving, the woman asks if he has seen her sister, but Virgil does not respond. Later, Virgil finds himself encircled by burnt-out fires and wild dogs. He contacts Keith, asking where he is. Keith responds that he's nearby and will arrive soon. Virgil cries on the phone, begging Keith to hurry as the wild dogs are closing in on him. At this point, it's revealed that Keith has been sitting at a distance, watching Virgil through binoculars. He waits until the dogs attack and drag Virgil away. Moments later, Virgil is shown being devoured by the dogs, still fixated on the gold. Shortly afterward, Keith arrives with his truck and excavator. As he looks down at Virgil's lifeless body, he returns to his truck, only to be shot in the chest by an arrow. The movie ends with Keith falling to the ground, trying to figure out who shot him, but finding no one. So that's it. Hope you enjoy the story. Follow for more videos.